So McCarthy was talking about uh, his favorite two leaders were Abraham Lincoln and Washington. And he was explaining his portrait of Lincoln, his portrait of Washington that hangs over his office. And he was admiring the Civil War, how Lincoln conducted himself in the Civil War, and George Washington conducted himself during the Revolution. And Trump always says and likes to brag about that I'm better than Lincoln, I'm better than Washington. So, in other words, insinuating, uh, let me explain it this way. If we have a year into the presidential election, so it's 2023, and we have a year into the presidential elections, and pretty soon, in a couple weeks, the campaign runoffs for the presidential election will take place. And for McCarthy to open up his swearing in as leader of the House with his speech of Abraham Lincoln and Washington, it just struck me odd that he picked those two figures while he was uh, repeatedly begging Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, uh, Congresswoman Bobart to let him in eventually, to let him in his position as Speaker of the House, and he will give them important committee chairs. And Trump has always been obsessed at his rallies. If you study his speeches and his public addressing, he always resorts to himself, I'm better than Lincoln, I'm better than Washington. He said that in the United Nations, I'm better than any living presidents in American history. But Trump always refers to Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. So I found that a little bit odd that McCarthy would adore his speech with symbolism towards Abraham Lincoln and Washington. Now take the Democratic Party for contrast. The total opposite. Hakeem Jeffries, if you heard his speech uh, that he gave inside the halls of Congress, it was all about unity. It was all about the Bill of Rights. It was all about the union of a fair democratic system that respect everybody for being created equal with unalienable rights. So that's a peaceful message. That's a peaceful and united message. A democratic foundation that will make any republic proud. Now, for McCarthy to be, after he spent close to 4 days begging Matt Gaetz, groveling at Matt Gaetz' feet, basically kissing his feet for permission to be Speaker of the House. Between Matt Gaetz and Congressman Bobart, McCarthy basically had to grovel and beg and kiss their feet. Worse than he did for January 6th when he went to kiss the ring of Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I don't trust this hypocrite McCarthy era. I don't trust it. For him to give a speech adoring Abraham Lincoln and adoring Washington? What is the sentiment behind that? A revolution and a civil war. And that's what Trump is and Bannon is insinuating. Cancel the Constitution and phase in a revolution. While the Democrats are busy defending the Bill of Rights, that all men are created equal with unalienable rights, while Trump is trying to subvert and steal and impose himself on the Republic. They denied, this corrupt college electoral system denied Hillary Clinton her victory. She had 3 million more votes than Trump, but somehow she ended up losing. And they were trying to repeat the same thing in 2020. Biden has 7 million more votes, and they were trying to annul it. And Trump was trying to appoint his self-choosing delegates. Even Steve Bannon admitted on tape when he was caught secretly recorded. Steve Bannon would say, "Oh, Trump is going to lose," but after midnight, he's going to come out and say that the election was stolen off of him, and then we'll crown him king of the republic. And Bannon is always saying, "We at war, we at war," in his podcasts. And Trump always says, "I'm better than Lincoln, better than Washington." So for McCarthy to be adoring the portraits of Lincoln and Washington is a whistle blow, a dog whistle blow to people like Matt Gaetz, Margie Taylor Greene, Congressman Bobart. It's a whistle blowing to Trump's base. McCarthy had to spend almost 4 days begging Matt Gaetz and Congresswoman Bobart for, "Please let me in to be Speaker of the House, please," groveling at their feet, kissing their shoes, begging on all fours. The same way after January 6th he went to kiss the ring of Trump. Why would McCarthy say Lincoln and Washington portraits sentiments? Why? Is he preparing for a civil war? Is he preparing for a revolution? Why, while the Democrats are busy about the Bill of Rights and the union and peace in America, they're worried about, Trump's base is worried about a civil war and a revolution. Didn't Margie Taylor Greene a couple days ago say, if me and Steve Bannon would have planned January 26th, we would have won and we would have been armed? So for Trump to always say, "I'm better than Lincoln, better than Washington," and for Matt Gaetz to whistleblow and the innuendos of his portraits of Lincoln and portrait of Washington, it's like a message to the Republican base on behalf of Trump. So there's a sharp contrast between the Democratic Party and this radical alt-right party of fascism. I don't trust it.